It would be comforting to think that the movie Silence of the Lambs was pure fiction. It wasn't. It was based on real crimes in a real FBI unit, which is known affectionately as the Psycho Squad. We went to the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia, to see how the unit gets into the minds of some of the most savage serial killers and rapists, and to meet the head of the unit, FBI agent John Douglas. What I wanted to ask you about first was the movie. Did you like it?
I thought it was a tremendous movie. It was scary as heck.
You were scared?
Oh, sure.
That's great. That's great.
Because unlike the real cases, in the real cases, we don't have the music in the background.
In the movie, Douglas was played by actor Scott Glenn.
Good morning.
Morning, Mr. Crawford.
Sorry to pull you off the course at such short notice.
A job's come up, and I thought about you. Not a job, really, more of an interesting errand.
As in the movie, Douglas and the other agents in his behavioral science unit, one of them played by Jodie Foster, visit prisons and interview convicted rapists and murderers to find out how they committed their vicious crimes and why.
In order to understand the murderer, you really must talk to murderers.
We learn how they think. We do try to get into their minds and think like they do. Otherwise, we couldn't do the job that we're doing.
We're looking at the probably the more violent criminals of society, the serial murderer, the serial bomber, the serial arsonist, the child molester, the kidnappers, the product tamperers.
The scum of the earth.
That's right, they're the worst of mankind.
Douglas is talking about people like Jeffrey Dahmer, the serial killer in Milwaukee who mutilated his victims. Douglas's unit is called the Psych Squad, or the Mind Trackers. When a case is unsolved, they study clues from autopsy reports and the most unimaginably grisly crime scene photographs and come up with a psychological portrait.
Oh. And what, he's just tortured her? He's just tortured her to
That's
death?
what happened in this crime scene.
What you have to look at is when you're looking at, I mean, we're looking at someone who's dead. For us to better understand the case, we're trying to imagine what this girl was experiencing at the time of the attack and what she would have been saying to the killer, and it would have been begging for a life. And
Was she alive when he was...
Oh, sure. She was alive, you know, throughout this.
I'm shaking inside because those pictures are so horrible. I don't know how you can do it over and over and over. I know I'm going to dream about it tonight.
Well, you won't be alone because there are many of us that deal with some of this through dreams also. They come back in their own way and impact the lives of us.
The agents are haunted not only by photographs of the tortured victims, but in some cases by their pleas and screams for mercy.
Well, what they do today is the subjects is that they will take audio tapes of the victims.
Subjects, you mean the murderers?
The murderers.
Yeah.
Because they don't kill week after week, and to keep the fantasy going, what they must do is they must make some type of audio tapes, in some cases videotapes of their victims. And so what they will do later on is in between each of the kills, they play back the tapes to themselves and relive it.
You have actual audio and videotapes of some of these
Killers.
doing the crime.
Doing the crime or torturing the victim. And then later on, they would play this back like you or I would listen to a piece of music.
The agents in the unit, Judd Ray, Jim Wright, and Pete Smerick, and the 8 others are swamped with work from state, local, even foreign police who send them their hardest to solve cases. We were allowed to sit in on a brainstorming session in a case from a police department in the Midwest. They wouldn't say exactly what city. The case was a brutal murder of a young woman, unsolved since 1984.
The body was lying in the center of the living room floor on its back, legs and arms was extended, and the throat was cut.
With the initial focus on the husband, the team begins studying the pictures of the crime scene and the victim.
There's not any display of anger from this guy that's excessive at all. So
2 hours later, the team begins drawing a profile.
I think we have a woman who was attacked probably for sexual assault, and she resisted, and his reaction was immediate physical infliction of injuries on her.
So I'm just wondering about his experience, having done this in the past. It seems to be limited.
I agree with you, Larry, and what points to that even more is just the manner of killing. I mean, this is pretty, not feeble way, but kind of a haphazard way. Look at the wounds on this girl's neck. I mean, an experienced guy would have done what?
Yeah.
Decapitated her with the first blow, and that would have been it. You see them all the time.
Hesitate, like.
There's some hesitation marks here.
And a more emotionally involved person would have done more, too.
At the end, the mind tracker sent the police a detailed message. It ruled out the husband. Here's who you should be looking for, they said. A young white male in his early 20s who lived near the victim. He has a fairly menial job, probably not an alcohol or drug abuser.
What we're trying to do is sort of narrow the focus so that the investigators are not all over the board trying to look at all suspects.
We should go into this thing like the Lone Ranger, and then we should kind of, how the Lone Ranger would kind of ride off with Tonto, and who were those masked men? They leave the silver bullet behind. That's how I want us to act. I think that's why when the police get to know us, we're not a bad group down here.
Oh, come on! The police say that you hold seances and that you're weird and that you're sorcerers and that you're the Ouija board man.
Now, if they worked, if those seances worked, I'd use them. If the Ouija board worked, I'd be glad to use it.
They're not witch doctors. I mean, they're FBI agents.
Tony Daniels, who heads the FBI Academy, is their boss.
A lot of them do have some background in psychology, but it's their investigative experience that's the key.
Judd Ray's investigative experience was close to home.
You were married to a woman who hired someone to kill you.
Yes, actually, 5 co-conspirators, 2 shooters.
You were shot by them?
Yes.
Mrs. Ray was sentenced to 10 years in prison for attempted murder. Ray had been shot 3 times by the contract killers and almost died. Just before his wife hired the killers, she began playing the part of the perfect wife so she wouldn't be a suspect.
So who gave you the good news?
I did.
You solved it?
Well, yes, in a way, because I was saying things like, this is not a reprisal. I put a lot of people in jail, but they couldn't get that close. The only person that could get that close to me is someone that I trusted implicitly. And that person had to be her.
Douglas specializes in interviewing the most heinous criminals. He's interviewed Charles Manson, Richard Speck, and David, son of Sam Berkowitz. And he's been able to draw some general conclusions.
They love to talk about their crimes. They get off on it. They relive it again, but the thing that really turns them on is that no one really ever asks them specific questions about their crimes. Serial killers, like a lot of violent killers, they're manufactured. And they're manufactured by the parents as a result of some type of abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. The child begins reacting in a violent way. And what begins to form is known as the homicidal triangle. And you find instances of arson, instances of animal cruelty, as well as enuresis, which is bedwetting. In fact, with serial killers, almost without exception, they'll have either 2 or 3 of those characteristics in their background.
If I was a torturer, why would I have waited so long to start a torture? The torture and the pains didn't start until really after January 29th.
This is not a scene from Silence of the Lambs, but it could have been, because Gary Heidnik is one of the men the killer in the movie was patterned after. As in the movie, the real-life Heidnik kept his victims in a pit in his basement where he raped and tortured them. Agents Douglas and Ray are on their way to talk to him on death row at the Pennsylvania State Prison in Pittsburgh. It'll be an interview that lasts 6 hours, an experience they hope will help them get into the mind of other ferocious criminals and torturers.
How much verbal exchange did you have with the girls down there in the basement?
At first, I tried to make it nice, right?
Yeah, how did you do that, Gary?
I was holding parties here, for one thing. I had a Christmas party and a New Year's party.
Heidnik told agents Douglas and Ray that he had a routine for the women he held captive in his basement.
8, they go down in the hole in the morning, board goes over the top of the hole with the sandbags, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and then they stay down there till roughly about 8 at night. Okay, now on this particular day...
Got a radio down here, right?
Oh, yeah.
Playing real loud?
Yes.
Why is that? To drown out any noise?
Right.
In case because you're leaving the house sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah, so you don't
I was... You know, I'm not holding nothing back. I realize that's incriminating. That's incriminating for me to say that in a state of mind. I was conscious enough to know that was a conscious act on my part, and that was essentially the reason.
To drown out that noise, for sure.
Well, they might like a little entertainment too, you know.
The radio didn't stop the women from screaming for help, so Gary Heidnik tried shocking them into silence with electricity.
You do say that you were electrocuted as punishment.
Yeah.
And you did that systematically for some time.
No. Only several days. Nothing was working. I was trying to find something that worked that would make them shut up to stop hollering so I could stop
progressive kind of infliction of pain on these women.
I was trying to find something that would make them behave.
But it was painful to them.
I hope so. I don't mean I hope so, but I mean, you know, that's what I was trying to achieve, you know, to make them behave.
After one of the victims died from torture, Heidnik told Douglas and Ray he didn't know what to do with the body.
I'm sitting there, you know, trying to figure out what the hell to do, you know. What the to do, you know. I started chopping up the body. It makes me sick just thinking about it. I dismembered the body and I you know, started burning it on the stove and in the oven and stuff, and that was when you got the big smell and all.
You're trying to destroy the evidence.
Right.
See, some people.
I consciously knew I was trying to hide the evidence.
Why do they kill?
The primary motivation is to manipulate and dominate and control that victim. How can this inadequate nobody, for the first time in his life, call the shots and decide whether or not this victim should live or should this victim should die?
Some agents have trouble distancing themselves from the horror stories like the one you just heard, so a lot transfer out of the unit. Many of those who stay find their health is affected. Skin rashes and ulcers are commonplace. Douglas keeled over and nearly died 7 years ago from viral encephalitis brought on by stress.
It's a different kind of work, and you just can't turn it off. And it's unlike other law enforcement work where, you know, like Jack Webb, just the facts, ma'am. Just give me the facts. Yeah. You leave the penitentiary sometimes, or you leave a crime scene, and you just cannot believe that someone could have done these acts to another person. And it is extremely difficult to detach your emotions. So you try to lose yourself in, you know, maybe reading a book if you can, or go out jogging, exercising.
You can't escape it.
Can't escape it. I walk into a park with my family, and I'm down by a stream. My eyes start looking around because this reminds me of previous crime scenes that I've been involved with in the past, and looking for the corpse. And the other agents out here will tell you the same thing, is you're always looking for signs like that.